Hey Sam, I just want to talk about my experience, my run in with esophageal necrosis today. I have had 3 major surgeries this past year, and it all started with esophageal necrosis, which is the medical condition that I couldn't find any advice, any information based on personal experiences. I couldn't find anyone talking about it, nothing. So I'm here to share my experience in hopes that it helps somebody in the future because this will happen again. I wish that it wouldn't because the experience was not easy, but someone's got to put their information out there. Someone's got to put their experience out there for others to find because I never, ever, ever want somebody to feel alone the way I did. Not alone in the sense of no family, no friends, no support, just alone in this journey. It wasn't easy, so I have to share my story. Um, I'm not going to do any cool slides or any transitions or anything like that. It's just going to be me sitting here with my coffee talking to you guys. So I don't really feel comfortable talking to my phone. So it's going to be really awkward before it gets better, so bear with me. November 9th, 2023 was my catastrophic episode with acute esophageal necrosis, also known as AEN. As I mentioned, it does affect the older side of people, and it typically aims for males. I was a 33-year-old female, and it was extremely rare. It is said that I'm a 1 in 3 million, and you know what? I had a better chance at winning the lottery, so I should have just bought a lottery ticket. I'm thankful every day to just be here because this was a serious incident. It was a serious medical incident. My pathology reports are still inconclusive, which leaves me feeling extremely uneasy. And going forward, you'll learn that I had another complication during my recovery from my surgery with esophageal necrosis and having to have my esophagus taken out. We'll get into that because I feel like I'm going to share my whole story and not just a third of it. So one day in the future, we'll get into my next surgery. However, the lead up to my esophagus trying to kill me was me having persistent acid reflux. I was constantly vomiting. I was constantly going to the bathroom, not peeing. I was pooping multiple times a day, an alarming amount of times a day. I had to change my careers. I was in traffic management. I flagged for 12 years in British Columbia, and I loved my job. I was a single mom. I made good money. I put a roof over my son's head. I put food in our bellies. I had everything under control, flagging. I was happy doing it. I was working with an amazing crew, but my health came first. And I had to change careers. I started my own cleaning business because I needed to be close to a bathroom at all times. I didn't know if I was going to be sick. I didn't know if I was going to need to go to the bathroom. I just knew I had to have access to a bathroom 24/7, no matter what. Okay, so I started my own company in 2021, and I progressively got more and more and more sick. At first, it was only vomiting, 2 or 3 times a week, feeling really crappy the other days, but vomiting 2 or 3 times a week, but always my IBS was out of control. There was no handling it, no matter what I ate, no matter what I did. It was a part of my life, and it still is, I'm not going to lie. So I did that solo for a long time, and I decided that I needed to hire some people because I grew, and I needed help because now I had people relying on me, and I was getting sicker. So as I worked from 2021 until 2022, the vomiting started to progress into daily vomiting. My acid reflux, I could wake up in the morning and think of drinking a sip of water, and my throat would burn. My throat would be on fire, and I complained about it often. I went to the hospital. I went to my doctor. I went to the hospital. With the constant vomiting, I was always dehydrated, and they would rehydrate me when I went to the emergency because I was depleted. I had nothing left to give. I had no choice but to go to the hospital, otherwise I felt like I was going to die. So I would go to the hospital, they would rehydrate me, and they would send me home. I didn't get further testing done. I didn't get medication. I wasn't told to go for blood work, nothing. So I'd be good, and then I would go home, and 3 weeks later I'd have to go back, and same thing. I would just get rehydrated and sent home. Sometimes they would give me potassium, sometimes they'd give me magnesium, but that's about it. So I finally, in 2022, I got an acid blocker called pantoprazole, and I took that, and I was still just breathing fire, and it was awful, and I was so sick. So I suffered my way through 2022. I'm building my own business at this point because I'm not reliable to go and work for somebody else. I have to do this for myself, and I just pushed through. Some days were getting hard. I did have to call and I did have to cancel, and I hated every minute of it, but my health was declining so quickly, so rapidly, and I had no idea. So I just struggled along 2022, vomiting, pooping. My throat's on fire. Couldn't figure it out. I went for an endoscopy in May of 2023, and they told me I had 2 ulcers. I had an ulcer in my duodenum, and I had an ulcer in my bowel. Sorry, not my bowel. My esophagus. And I was like, okay. They were just like, the one in your bowel is small, not to worry about. The other one is also small. Just stop eating spicy foods. Don't drink carbonated drinks. Yada, yada, yada. They didn't give me any medication for it. They just told me I had ulcers, and that was it. And I got very, very, very sick after I had the endoscopy. I was coughing for months. I just couldn't get better. My throat was so sore, and I thought it was normal. It might still be normal. I don't know if it had anything to do with anything. Who knows? I told my doctor about it, and, nothing. Okay, so I continue on, and that summer was particularly hard. I was visibly ill all the time. I was vomiting. I was going to the bathroom. I could not maintain my weight because I was in and out of the bathroom so frequently. It was terrifying. And finally, in November, I vomited so much. November 4th, I think it was a Friday, of 2023, I felt something shift in my throat. And it was different. I didn't have any vomit. I didn't have any blood in my vomit, but something changed. My throat hurt. So I was just going to town. I was so weak. I was so shaky. I couldn't figure it out. And I yelled out to my husband, I'm like, you need to call 911 because I need to go to the hospital, and I need them to take me seriously. I can't hardly breathe. I'm too weak. Please just call 911. So he did. The ambulance came to our home, and they took me away. And we went down to our local hospital. I'm going to keep that hospital nameless because I'm not happy. But we went down to the local hospital. In the ambulance, they wheeled me in the gurney. I went into triage. I went from triage. They sent me for a CT scan in a neighboring hospital. We went to just over the bridge to the other hospital. I can't name that one either, just because you'll know which hospital I originally went to. Anyways, and they did a CT scan there. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, finally, I am making headway. So I got that CT scan, and I got sent back to the other hospital and rehydrated and sent home. Excuse me? Not even 24 hours later, I'm vomiting. I'm right back to square one. I am depleted. I don't have energy. I can barely breathe. My husband was at work, and I can't drive myself to the hospital, so I called 911 again. And I'm like, hi, I'm so-and-so. You really need to send somebody. I need to go to the hospital. I can't stop vomiting. I'm weak. I feel faint. I'm alone. And I waited for 45 minutes and nothing. And my husband finally got home from work, and I'm like, babe, I called 911. You got to call them again and tell them, like, I can't breathe, because I couldn't breathe. So they sent the firemen to my house, and I don't know how long I was with the firemen, but they gave me oxygen until the ambulance got there. When the ambulance got there, they took me back to the hospital, and you guessed it, they rehydrated me, they gave me some potassium, and they sent me home again. Okay, so now it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday morning. It's my mom's birthday. It's November 7th. And I had just spent the entire weekend in the hospital, in the ER area, in a chair hooked up to saline solution, IVs, warm blankets, magnesium and potassium. Rehydrated twice this past weekend, so keep in mind, I was okay to go home. I was not dehydrated any longer, but every time I went home, I vomited and I pooped so much that I was completely dehydrated again. And I'm not eating. I have not eaten since November 4th, okay? And it's November 7th at this point. So my mom takes me back to the hospital. She bathes me. I'm 33 years old. My mom bathes me, takes me back to the hospital, and I spend the entire day hooked up to IV in a chair. And finally, at about midnight, they said, we're going to admit you to a room. And finally, oh my gosh, thank you. I'm going to be taken care of. You know, something's going to change. I'm going to get a team, and they're going to look at me. So I thought. So I get a room. I think it was on the same floor, just over a ways, because there wasn't any stairs. And I spend 2 nights in this room. And the first night, you know, I was just going to the bathroom and vomiting. They kept wanting me to try to drink, to rehydrate orally so that I could go home. Eat and drink, keep it down and go home. So I was on multiple medications for nausea, Gravol, Maxaran, Ondansetron. That's all I was on there. And we were on like a rotation, so it wasn't all given to me at once. It was sort of spaced out. I wish they stayed on top of it more, but that's okay. I vomited until there was blood in my vomit, and I told the nurses, and they said, what do you want us to do about it? And I said, I don't know. There's blood in my vomit, and I'm letting you know because I don't have any medical background. I don't know what to do. And so that was weird to me. And I was going to the bathroom so much that my mom decided it was time to start keeping track of the times and the movements. So every bowel movement that I had, my mom would record on a piece of paper. So we did that for 2 days, and in a 24-hour span, I had 67 bowel movements. No blood or anything in my bowel movements, but 67 times is a lot. I'm going to leave you with whatever thoughts you're having on that, because I can assure you it's worse than what you're thinking. Okay? But moving along, heck, if you want to talk about it, sure. But I'll leave the video at that. If you have any questions, ask away. And at that point, I was really sick. So my mom had been there a long time. So she's like, Samantha, I'm going home. I need to sleep. I'm like, you do you. Like, I get it. You've been watching me sleep. Thanks for being here. You know, my husband, too, was there. So they both went home to get some sleep. My husband had to go to work the next day. And I called my husband at about 3 in the morning and I say, hey. No, I call my mom. Sorry, I call my mom at about 3 in the morning. I'm like, Mom, you got to come back to the hospital. Like, my back's really hurting me. I don't know what's going on. I'm extremely uncomfortable. Like, my back is sore. It feels like I'm getting a kidney infection. Oh, Sam, okay, I'll be right down there. She didn't show up. She was still sleeping. I had a sleep conversation with her, which is fine. So I called my husband at about 6, and I'm like, hey, babe, can you come crack my back? Like, it hurts so bad. I called my mom, but she went back to sleep, and I didn't want to bug her again. So he's like, yeah, babe, I'll come by before work. So he comes down there, and he cracked my back. He's trying anything he can. You know, I'm doing, like, the high school chair back cracks. Like, I'm trying to make my back feel better. I try a warm blanket. I try, like, breathing because my breathing starts to get labored. And I'm like, well, maybe it's my anxiety. Like, I'm not doing too good. And it was just like, ugh. I'm just feeling it. And I'm really not able to breathe very good. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So my husband, like, you know, in your nose, out your mouth, nice and calm breathing. He sits there and he breathes with me. We're doing breathing exercises, and the nurses, they don't care. And it's wild to me that they don't care. And I mentioned to them that I'm struggling breathing, so they do an oxygen test. And they said, it's fine. And it didn't seem fine. So that's 6 in the morning. 7:30 comes along. It's just like, I'm just not able to breathe. That's not normal. I've never experienced this, and it's just really, really, really hard to get a breath in. I can't do it. And 7:30, 8 o'clock, my mom finally gets there. Now, my mom and my husband, they're like, what the heck is going on? How come she's not being taken care of? You know, listen to this. This isn't normal, kind of thing. So I progressively get worse, and the nurses are refusing. They're saying, stop bothering us. Leave us alone. We can't do anything more for you. And I didn't realize I was bugging you. I just can't breathe. Thank you. My husband had enough, so he went and he found a doctor in the hallway and dragged this doctor into my room. And the rest is kind of blurry. Okay, so just bear with me. I was dragged, not in like a rude way, but like put onto a stretcher and rolled into trauma. And I remember like leaving my room on a stretcher and being wheeled into trauma. The words trauma were above me, and I'm just like, at that point, I'm like, okay, this is not happening to me. No way, no. So I full on disassociated. So what had happened is everything that I was drinking finally started going to my chest cavity, and my chest cavity filled up with 3.5 liters of liquid, and my lung collapsed. So when I was struggling to breathe and begging for help, it's because my lung was collapsed, and my second one was going too. So, you know, I did really need some help, and I didn't think that I was bothering them, but I guess I was. Anyways, so I am in trauma. I'm with the doctors, and it's loud, okay? It's loud, and I hear swearing, and I hear movement and shuffling, and like I feel the stretcher has wheels, and I can feel it moving around, and like everyone getting into place, and tables and people all around me. My eyes are closed, okay? And they start going to work. There's no time for anesthesia. There's nothing. I am awake. They are drilling holes. Okay, they didn't drill, but they cut holes into my body that I felt. And I recall thinking, I'm being carved like a pumpkin. And finally, they started on this side. So I had 2 chest tubes put in over here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're done. Thank God. Like, I wasn't fully there because, as I said, I disassociated, but I could feel the carving. I could feel it happening. And then I heard the doctor say, okay, and now the other side. And I was like, what do you mean the other side? Like, what happened? And they had to put 2 more chest tubes on this side, and it all happened with no freezing. It was just me, and it was just their tools, and it was them. I heard it all, I felt it all, and then they were done. And I remember getting some blankets put on top of me, and getting put into the ambulance, and they're like, she needs to go to, I didn't hear the hospital name, but she needs to go to, and then I remember the ride to the hospital. I went to Surrey Memorial, and I remember the feeling of being the wrong way in the car, or the ambulance, sorry, not the car. So I remember facing backwards and going forwards, and it being the most nauseating feeling ever, because you gotta remember, I was extremely nauseated through all of this. And so I remember we were driving to Surrey. I think we were on the highway. My eyes were closed. My eyes had been closed since I got wheeled into trauma. That was the last thing I saw. And we had a bump on the highway or on the road, and I left that stretcher, and then I slammed down on it with these freshly installed chest tubes. Holy shit, I have never experienced pain like I experienced in that moment. And that's where it kind of fades for me. The rest of the story is what has been told to me by my husband and by my mom, because those 2 did not leave my side for days. So at first, the surgeon at Surrey Memorial, he met with my husband and said, okay, we think Samantha's esophagus is perforated. This is what we're going to have to do, this, and this. There's a small chance that it's esophageal necrosis. I don't think that it is. If it is, it will change the scope of work. However, I just need you to sign these paperwork so we can fix her perforation, and the surgery is going to be about 4 hours, 4.5 hours. So he goes in and he starts the surgery, and my husband signs the paperwork. And the surgeon calls him and says, hey Mike, it is esophageal necrosis, and this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to remove her esophagus. We're going to have to do this, and that. I don't know if he fully explained it because time wasn't on his side. Mike asked about the quality of life, and he said, we're going to have to talk about that after. I just need permission to do the surgery. So he said, yeah, sign the paperwork, and my surgeon got to work with his team and saved my life. I woke up days later because I had to go into a induced coma for 3 days. I was septic, so I was not in good shape. I had less than a 10% chance at survival, and that scared my family a lot. We've never faced this. I was 33 at the time. I'm 34 now. I was 33 at the time, so it was a shocker. It was a shocker to everybody, my family, myself, my doctors, my surgeon. Like, this isn't something that they see often. This, maybe 1, maybe 2 in their entire careers. And hi, I'm Sam. What's up? So I woke up, and I woke up with a tube, a vent, something in my throat to prevent it from closing my airway while I was in a coma. And I remember waking up, and I was not okay with that. No way, no how. So I kind of passed back out, but they kept waking me up because I had to wake up, and breathe through it. And I don't know how long it had to be in there because I don't know, my entire body was different. And I got something big and black right here that I can't talk, I can't breathe right. There's something down my throat, and I remember it coming out, and like finally like taking my first breath on my own. Oh, and looking around my spaceship room and being like, where the fuck am I? You know, like, I have no idea where I am. I have never seen anything like this. I was in ICU. Jesus, like, it just bizarre. It's the most bizarre thing. And then I think I went back to sleep because I don't remember. And then I woke up again and my room was calm. I didn't have anything in my throat. And I could finally look around and check everything out. So I remember my toe having a bright red light on it. And I was like, oh, ET, phone home. But no, that was just the heartbeat monitor on my toe that I could see glowing under the blanket. Totally bizarre. And then I remember feeling pain, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I had 4 chest tubes, 2 feeding tubes. I had an NG tube coming out my nose. I had a surgical site tube. I had cords. I had IVs. I had just like, you name it, I had it. Oh, the catheter, like, I was a walking machine. Machines were keeping me alive, and they wanted me to go for a walk. And I was like, okay, sure thing. I had water weight. I was just bandaged. My entire torso was covered in bandages. My arms, just everything. And I had an ostomy bag on my neck, and I was trying to get it off. Like, why do I have a bag on my neck? My husband had to tell me that they removed my esophagus. And that I wouldn't be able to eat again. And I had to learn how to use my feeding tube and take all my pills crushed up through my tube. And it was just not, it wasn't believable, you know, like, there's no way that I just went to sleep for 5 days and all of this isn't real. But it was real. Every time I swallowed, my saliva went through my tunnel into my bag, so it came out of my fistula into the ostomy bag, and it was just like, wow, this is real. And it took some getting used to. I never fully did get used to it, but I was grateful. After the initial shock wore off, I realized how lucky I was to still be alive. And I'm grateful every day for that. My surgeon, his team, I couldn't have been in better hands. I've never met a surgeon or a doctor that cares as much as he did. And I wouldn't be here without him. I wouldn't be here without his team and the loyal nurses too. I think, I'm not a religious person, but I'm just so thankful every single day for them, for their knowledge and their generosity, you know, like, the one experience at my first hospital was awful. I felt like they would just be okay letting me die. And then going to Surrey Memorial, where you're just flooded with care and support and just a wealthy amount of knowledge and time. My surgeon had nothing but time. I wasn't a number. I was a human being with a very chronic, serious medical condition that really needed answers, and I really needed help, and my family was scared, and I was scared. You know, we had just been through a lot, and I'll never forget my experience at Surrey Memorial. You know, my whole life, I'll never ever forget. I'll never forget the feelings. I'll never forget anything. So, summing it up, esophageal necrosis tried to fucking kill me. And it didn't, but it changed my life. It really put basic things into perspective. you know, the ability to be able to swallow, and it hit your digestive system, the ability to be able to go out to eat with your family or your friends in a social setting, you know, that's fun. When you have to sit there and you have to watch people enjoy those things because you still want to go out and you still want to be social, but you can't partake, it's sad. It's hard. I stayed home a lot, but that's not really what I want to talk about today. The whole process, the whole surgery, it was painful. At the end of it, when I came out and I found out how many staples I had to have had at least 68 staples. They had to cut my neck here. I had 28 staples. And I had my torso from my breasts to my belly button the first time. I had 30 something staples in there, and then I also had my wing cut back here, and there was a solid amount. There was 30 plus staples, so I'm already 68 isn't enough. And I kept 2 because why not, when they came out. But it's just bizarre, and I'm just so grateful with the progress that our medical systems have learned, because I would have just died if this was 30 years ago, if this was 20 years ago, heck, maybe even 10. Okay, we've just progressed so much with the wealth of knowledge and the things that surgeons and doctors can do these days. The way that they can just reconstruct you to temporarily make your body function in your time of need is phenomenal. I really feel like I should be dead, and I'm not, because my surgeon saved my life, put me back together in the best way possible, in an extremely emergent way. So that's a little bit of my story about what happened to me. It was the first scariest thing that happened. And I'll never forget it. I won't forget it for the bad. I won't forget it for the good. But I'll move on from it. And I want to share my experience because I don't want people to be out there alone. It's so, so important to talk about these things. So I'm here to answer questions. I have a whole year's worth of things that I did that worked for me, that didn't work for me, that were scary, that were absolutely useless, things that were, why didn't I think of this sooner? Just totally genius. So I'm going to share those, but first I just have to do the groundwork. I want to get my story out there. I want to share what happened before, what happened during, what happened after. So this is my esophageal necrosis story. Bear with me for the rest, okay? Cool. Thanks. Have a good day.